Have you ever considered that the way we talk about politics, with teams, strategies, wins and losses, might actually be, well, kind of a dangerous simplification? It certainly feels like a high-stakes game for a lot of people, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But what if treating it like a game actually blinds us to what's really going on?
That's precisely the really challenging question we're getting into today. We're stepping into this intense philosophical and ethical critique from Larken Rose. The article's called "You Empowered the Violence You Claim to Oppose."
Wow, okay. Just that title alone, it's a bit of a punch to the gut, isn't it?
It really is.
It signals right away this isn't going to be some gentle academic chat. Rose's piece it's raw. It's unfiltered. A real hard look at modern democracy, especially in the U.S.
Yeah, and our mission today really is to unpack Rose's incredibly critical and I'd say emotionally charged reflection. He's forcing us, and you listening, to confront political complicity, our own responsibility, and the often brutal, real-world outcomes of voting. We're going to explore his main arguments and the, frankly, uncomfortable questions they raise about where we all fit into this political landscape.
So let's kick things off where Rose does. He just flat out rejects the idea of politics as a simple contest.
Right.
He says point blank, it's not about our guy versus your guy. For him, it's about real world actions that lead to kidnapping, war, bombing, and death. I mean, why start there? What's he trying to do by stripping away that common view right off the bat?
Well, I think he's deliberately trying to shatter any sense that this is abstract. He sees that whole game idea as a dangerous delusion, really. Yeah. A way for people to sort of distance themselves from the actual suffering that political decisions cause. He's really condemning what he sees as this tribal mindset, where loyalty to a party somehow makes you feel okay, like you're not responsible for what the people you voted for actually do. The key thing for Rose, I think, is that your intention doesn't cancel out your responsibility, especially when the results are, life and death.
And he really tries to nail that point with a pretty powerful analogy. He says, let me get the quote right. It's like cheering for a sports team that goes out and starts actual fights off the field and then claiming you're innocent because you just wore the jersey. That's designed to make you uncomfortable.
Definitely.
What do you think is the core impact of that comparison for his whole argument?
It forces this kind of visceral connection, right? He's taking it away from abstract political talk and making it personal. It's about direct responsibility, not just waving a flag or, wearing the jersey.
Yeah.
And that analogy, it perfectly sets up his next point, which is even more provocative, frankly.
Which is?
That voters aren't just innocent bystanders. He argues they're active participants in violence when they support politicians he calls warmongering.
Okay, that's a huge claim. The idea that just voting becomes complicity.
Yeah.
That's going to be jarring for a lot of people listening.
Yeah.
How does he actually build that bridge, connecting, ticking a box on a ballot with empowering violence?
He focuses on the idea of permission.
Permission.
Yeah. He argues that by validating the system with your vote, you're tacitly, sort of implicitly endorsing the violent actions taken by the people you elect.
Okay.
And then he drives it home with examples. He talks about former President Trump's use of ICE, the expansion of drone strikes, interventions in places like Iran, Gaza, Yemen.
Right.
He's making the case these aren't just things that happen out there. They're direct results of the power voters grant.
And he doesn't hold back on attacking things people might see as positive either. The article goes after the no new wars narrative pretty hard.
Exactly. He points out that, in his view, Trump actually escalated existing conflicts even more aggressively than Obama did. And he calls Obama a war criminal, too, in the piece.
So no free passes for anyone.
Not at all. He insists neither side gets off the hook. And he extends that critique to the whole system, calling democracy itself a cult of delusion.
A cult of delusion. What does he mean by that?
He argues it's basically designed to distance people from accountability, to make them feel detached from the often brutal results of the choices made in their name.
So people just press a button, vote, and then wash their hands of it when bad things happen.
That's his perspective. It's not just about apathy for him. It's a fundamental challenge to how much real agency we have or think we have in the system.
Right.
We often mistake just participating passively for being disengaged. But for Rose, that very participation is empowering force. He puts it like this. It wasn't a popularity contest. It was giving someone the societal permission to exert violence over others.
That quote really hits hard. It frames the whole social contract differently, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. He's implying that our collective participation, even if it feels minimal, basically grants permission for actions maybe we'd personally condemn. It forces you to ask, well, where does my responsibility really start and end in a system this big?
What I found really compelling, maybe the most uncomfortable part, is how he takes this big philosophical argument and then zooms right in on something incredibly immediate, like the border and immigration. How does he use that specific example?
He uses it to put a human face on these big, abstract ideas. And he uses incredibly strong language he calls ICE border Nazis in the article.
Wow.
Yeah, it's meant to shock the reader, to make them recognize the severity. He talks about peaceful, hardworking people being violently detained or deported. He directly challenges the idea that most undocumented immigrants are criminals.
So for him, supporting tough immigration policies isn't just policy.
No, for him, it's rooted in ignorance and dehumanization. And that makes voters complicit in the actual harm being done to real people.
And speaking of shocking, he even goes into the territory of manufactured war. He talks about the possibility of a false flag operation, like a staged attack, to justify a war with Iran. Why put that kind of speculation in there?
Well, it's important to say he doesn't present it like a definite prediction, right? It's more like a reflection of how extreme and manipulative he believes government actors can be, especially when they don't have public support for what they want to do.
So it's about illustrating potential deception.
Exactly. He wants to highlight what he sees as their willingness, maybe even their capacity, to create support for war, even if it means hurting their own people. For Rose, it's a stark warning about the depths of manipulation he thinks are possible in the systems we empower.
Okay, so following Rose's line of argument, who's actually to blame for all this? The article is really clear about spreading the blame around. Both Republicans and Democrats are held accountable for enabling what he terms authoritarian violence.
Yeah, and what's really crucial here is his insistence that, quote, voting for either party contributes to systemic harm.
So it doesn't matter which side you pick.
According to Rose, no. He suggests the blame isn't just with one leader or one party, but it's shared by anyone who supported either side without critically assessing the consequences. That just widens the circle of responsibility massively, doesn't it? Puts it right back on the voters.
And that leads straight into his ultimate challenge, his wake-up call. Responsibility, he says, you just can't outsource it. He directly challenges readers, stop pretending they're victims when they've helped empower monsters. I mean, that is profoundly harsh phrasing. It really forces you to just sit with that for a moment, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And Rose intends for that to be the final, inescapable point of his whole argument. He gives this stark warning, look, if authoritarianism and violence eventually show up at your door, don't just think it's bad luck.
He's saying it's partly your fault.
That's exactly what he's saying. His final moral is totally unambiguous. You built a monster. If it steps on you, you can't blame anyone but yourself. He's not offering any comfort there. He's demanding some serious self-examination on a level that, yeah, many people are going to find deeply unsettling.
Wow. Okay. This deep dive into Larken Rose's article, You Empowered the Violence You Claim to Oppose, it really forces you, the listener included, to grapple with some very uncomfortable ideas.
Yeah.
His core message, and he doesn't compromise on it, is that political choices have deadly, real consequences, and voters are active participants, not just, watching from the sidelines.
It's definitely an accusatory reckoning, like the source material says. It's deliberately meant to make you uncomfortable, to provoke, to insist on the moral and the practical consequences of political action and inaction, too.
Right.
He really wants people to get past seeing politics as just abstract policy and see it in terms of, well, blood, bombs, and broken families, as he might put it.
So, thinking about all this, for you, listening right now, given this incredibly challenging perspective from Rose, how might we start to rethink the whole idea of civic engagement? What does it mean to participate?
Yeah, and what new questions does it raise about the personal responsibility we might actually carry for the actions of people we empower when we vote?
Definitely something to mull over.
Yeah.
A lot to think about there.